Sanjiv, you could start.
Welcome to our show, Confession of a Futurist with Sanjiv Goyal. We invite mavericks, thought leaders, and change makers. Today, I have a very special guest, dear friend of mine, Mr. Arjun Malhotra. Those who live in Silicon Valley, he's a Silicon Valley legend in technology for almost 5-6 decades, built companies like HCL, Headstrong, and many. But the biggest thing about him is those who have met him personally, I haven't met such a phenomenal person and go-giver in my life. Let's talk to him and learn from him what future holds for us. Arjun, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you for that very kind but very flowery introduction. Thank you.
Well, I think it's very little, Arjun. I know you. Anyway, some other day we'll talk. So today I have a very important question for you. You are an entrepreneur for almost 6 decades. You have built phenomenal companies. And this show, I wanted to have a little different dialogue because a lot of time when we look at the people who are as successful as you, we believe that, you are different. You haven't made any mistakes. So do you have anything you would like to share with our audience, which you consider as your confession?
Sure. Everyone makes mistakes. And so the first confession I have is I haven't been an entrepreneur for 6 decades, just 4.5. I started in 1975. So please don't age me more than I am already. But
sorry.
Yeah, but no. Getting back to the question you asked, yes, everyone makes mistakes. And in fact, the important thing is you've got to learn from your mistakes. If you are successful, people only remember the successes. And I'll give an example. Everyone remembers HCL or knows and thinks of HCL as a success. And yes, HCL is a success, has been a success. But we did a number of things that were failures. We tried to get into electronic cash registers when we were very young. Realized later that it was a more mechanical device than electronics device or electrical device. And therefore, basically got out of the business. We sold it to Bradma of India. And, over time, we made a number of mistakes like that. Fortunately, when we were doing it in the 70s and 80s and 90s, how do I put it? There wasn't that much competition. You could stumble and recover and still go ahead. Unfortunately, that luxury probably doesn't exist to that extent today, unless you're really in a pioneering area where you have that option. Because there's so many other people already doing things that are similar to what you're doing. So, it's not that we don't make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The key is you've got to know how to recover from them and to move forward. I think that's the important thing.
So true, Arjun. And so let's talk about a little bit about you personally. So we always talk about entrepreneurs are so perfect that they don't have any vices. So is there anything you would like to share, like any sweet shop you remember from your childhood you still want to go back to, or a single malt scotch?
Yeah, lots of things, so my favorite dessert, for example, is kheer. You know what kheer is. And my mother told me that was the first quote unquote solid food I had tasted when I was a baby. So I think it's probably partly psychological because of that and partly because it does taste good. Yeah, there are always places you want to go back to. I mean, I grew up in Delhi when you could move around fairly easily. And there are places in Old Delhi, Paranthe Wali Gali, Big Puris, there in Paharganj, there's a gentleman called Kohli, I'll get the name of his shop, that makes chole bhature. So, you go, you remember those places to some extent, you fantasize about them because you were younger and you enjoyed that food. So yes, I definitely, and when I was at Calcutta Sky Room, which is now closed down, the chicken tetrazzini, their prawn cocktail, For the people who been to Calcutta or lived in Calcutta, they would remember that. So you do have some favorite places. Here in the Bay Area, I think most Indians have to find a Chinese place which is home away from home, but that's your comfort food. When you get into, and there are now some Indian Chinese restaurants coming up and stuff like that. So it's food is an important part. It doesn't have to dictate your life, but it's an important part of what you do and what you enjoy and how you relax.
So for our audience, just for your reference, we are all not very healthy. We eat when we enjoy food and we love living too. And Arjun said it, find where your wise is, but not too far. We still have to manage our health extremely well so we can be in the peak state. So Arjun, you have started several companies. You have mentored thousands of people I know who come across. Even I personally learned so much from you. So how do you define an entrepreneur mindset?
So first thing is you've got to have passion. I tell entrepreneurs when they come to me with ideas, I try and judge, you should want to change the world in some way, right? Then you look at the idea and say, does the idea for which this person has passion, is it a good idea? Is it a large enough market? Et cetera, et cetera. The other thing you got to remember is that no one can ever do it alone. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. So you've got to be able to work with a team. And so you look at the team and the group of people that are there, and you look at their attitudes, the whole how do they gel, their capability and their chemistry, basically. And I strongly believe that you have to work with people who are smarter than you. Now, I keep telling a lot of people I meet that, you may not think there are people who are smarter than you, but they're out there. You have to go and find them. And if you do get them in to work with you, then please listen to them. Don't get a smart guy in and then tell him to do something all the time and not listen to him or her. So I think that's really what it amounts to. And if they've got a good idea that is a large market, and if they've got a good team and they've got a passion, I think there's a very good chance that they'll be successful.
So Arjun, whenever we meet, we always talk about time. You are a big fan of how do you optimize time? Because that's all we have. That's one commodity we all have equally.
So you're asking a very difficult question. I've been battling my whole life as to how to balance time between family and work. And let me tell you, my conclusion is that there's no way you can balance it. There's no real solution. The more time you spend at home, like we do during this lockdown, they still don't think it's enough, or you don't spend enough quality time, even though you're there physically all the time. And so you have to find your own balance. And I think the important thing is A, balance your work-life kind of time, and B, in your work too, try and balance your transaction and thinking time. If you get stuck in transactions, it's like a nasha. It's it's sort of you think you're taking all these small decisions all the time, clearing up transactions, but unfortunately, you're not looking at the strategic part of the business. You're not looking at what's going to happen in the future. You're not using your knowledge, wisdom, intelligence, whatever acumen to try and judge where things are going, how they would be going, because you're so busy clearing transactions. So I think it's very important for everyone, whether you're in a job or you're an entrepreneur or whatever you're doing, is to try and balance your life between transactions and so, when you see people on the phone, obsessively on the phone all the time, I always feel, where do they do any thinking at all? So in the old days when we didn't have to sit on the phone that often, one used to try and email became, it used to take over your life. So I would try and clear my email for an hour in the morning, clear my inbox, maybe an hour at lunchtime and maybe an hour in the evening, and then not look at it at all. And even now, when I go for my walk, I don't carry my phone with me most of the time, unless I know there's something brewing. And, it's my time. I can think about life. I can think about daydream. I can do whatever I want. I find it very relaxing. I find it also helps me get a lot clearer in what I'm thinking about. And if there's a specific problem someone has left with me, some dilemma that he or she is going through that I haven't been able to try and look at, I try and spend time on that and see if I can come up with some alternative scenarios that might be workable. So, time is our most precious resource. And what we do with it is really up to us. We do tend to get lost in transactions because they are so, they make us feel so excited, make us feel we are doing something all the time. We are very busy, but it's not really, how do I put it? It's not the good way to be busy. Yes, you've got to do transactions. Life can't exist without them, but you've got to try and control them and manage them and delegate if you're at a position where you can delegate.
I mean, so true. And I met Kiran, your wife. So I was about to say that you are really lucky. You found a partner, not a spouse, not a wife. And that's very hard. And we both know it's not one-sided. You have built that partnership with her. And for our audience, it's important. It's not about work-life balance. It's about building the partnership. Once you build the partnerships, once you enroll your partner, then the life is very different. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, absolutely. And, for us, it'll be 50 years later on this year. So it's not, it's not been a short run. It's been a nice long run, and I've really enjoyed it. In fact, I always tell people that I made the decision to get married to her when I was 19. She was 17.
Wow.
And I still think that, in a way, that was the most important decision of my life, probably the best decision of my life. And, I think that's how I really became an entrepreneur. Because if I could take a decision like that when I was 19 and know it was a good decision, I thought that, hey, I can take a lot of other decisions in life that are going to work out. So, thank you for bringing that up.
That's so true. That's so true. Well, hey, we both know without her, you won't be here. We both know that. So Absolutely. It is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Well, for our audience, please call our studio at 510-657-1170 if you have a question for me or Arjun. Even live questions, he's open here. He will tell you how you can build a better relationship too. So Arjun, coming back to the entrepreneurship, that's our favorite topic. That's the promise I did in IIT 2020 that I'm going to personally help and enroll people like you to mentor the future of future entrepreneurs. And it's a serious question. In last year, interestingly enough, the research shows that 300 billion has been invested in startups, which is not a huge amount, but it is a pretty large amount. 4% over year 2019. And 60% of the startups fail even after raising millions of dollars. That's such a waste of funds or waste of money. What really happened? Why 60% startups? Because general perception is, I didn't get the money. That's why I couldn't build the company. That's why I couldn't bring the idea to the market. What do you think is the real problem?
So, let me answer the question a little differently.
Please.
There are something like 40, 50 people, some number 30 people who enter a 100-meter race in the Olympics, but only 3 people get medals. Is that a waste of energy for so many people to enter? It's really the best person wins, right? That is true in entrepreneurship too. It's not that I start something and no one else is in that space. I don't think that happens today. So there are a number of people running the same race, and not all of them are going to win. Sometimes only one wins, sometimes a few of them win, and the rest lose. And so lose here means, some people just recover what is invested. Some people actually make a loss, write off the company, but they've all run the race. They've all tried to at least run the race, so to say. So I really think it's part of life. It's part of how you look at it. And it's not that after losing 60% of the companies or 60% of the companies failing, the VCs are backing off from funding other companies. They're funding more and more companies. So obviously it works for them. The ones that are winners give them enough recovery to cover the losses that they make on the failed operations. So I really don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's the way life works. And, I meet a lot of people who've been multiple companies. Some of them have failed, but they think the next one is going to really make it. And, that's a great attitude to have. And I really like them because if they've learned from what mistakes they've made or from their failures, they not necessarily make mistakes, but from what happened in their failures, then there's a much better probability that the next company will do well and they won't make the same mistakes again, at least. So I really don't see anything wrong with that. I think that's the way the system works. That's the way it is supposed to work. Otherwise, you'll get to what happened in India, where you had a license raj, and the government estimated the market size and said, I'll license 120% of the market. And then half the people didn't get into manufacturing. So you only had 60% of the production, and prices were controlled by them, because it was a supply-led economy, not a demand-led economy. So, I really am all for overproduction. Let the best person win. I mean, I've got to stay on my toes. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to win this race.
So, Arjun, you have a very high degree of success. So there must be a secret, or there is something which I will like to know. I'm sure our audience would like to know what has worked for you. Is there a formula or something or a ritual?
I can just say one thing, that ultimately it's people. Yes, technology plays a role, but it's ultimately people who make you successful. So if you get the right kind of people and you can motivate them and keep them happy and motivated, you'll find success. I basically think ultimately it is people. And nothing has changed from that. I mean, there are very few businesses or things which are dependent only on technology. Yes, technology is an important ingredient of a lot of businesses, but ultimately it's the people who make it, who differentiate it, who make it better. When you talk about quality today in say a hotel or a retail environment or whatever, good quality is getting a better experience than you've had before. Now think of that as a moving target. There's no number there. It's what you have experienced before. Can I give you a better experience? Then I am good quality, right? That is the real challenge. And that's true when you manage people too. I think you have to make sure that they're motivated. You have to make sure that they enjoy coming to work, that if they have to work more than 8 hours a day, they do it happily, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's culture ultimately that you can create that makes companies successful. That's my view. And, I've always tried to manage in that particular way. The other thing I try to do is I would never ask anyone to do something I wouldn't do myself. And people know that. Once they know that, then it's very difficult for them to say no. Right. So, just a few things, just being a good human being, I think, if you just put it that way, if I can define it in a few words, and that's really what people look for. They want you to be fair. They just want you to be someone they can trust, and that they know you'll be fair. I think that's what motivates most people to do what you want them to do. So really, I think success is tied to people. And if you are good to your people, if you do right by them, they'll do right by you.
True. So true. So, it's the same conversation I had with Mohit Aaron 2 months ago or 3 months ago, roughly. And the big thing, exactly what he said is, this is Sanjiv. Yes, mission, vision, all that are wonderful. That's the reason I was able to raise so much money. I was able to build such a successful company. But in reality, the only reason I'm able to build a company is I build a culture. And I don't compromise. I don't let anybody in my company compromise on the culture. And I hear the same thing about the people who work with you. and they were part of two major companies you have, HCL and Headstrong both. They always acknowledge and they always said that Arjun has built a culture of success where every single person who worked with you, he feel empowered to do something meaningful with his life. Correct me if I'm wrong.
True, true. That's the right word. You got to empower them. If you get good, intelligent, smart people, you recruit it right, then they should do the right thing. And yes, sure, people will make mistakes. You can forgive mistakes. You can even take a financial hit because of the mistake. But the lesson is don't do it again. Don't make the same mistake again. And if they're smart people, they won't. And so that's how it sort of, I don't know. I've been told to try and write a book on this. I'm going to try. I don't know how to write a book on it. But so we're starting something on HCL and trying to see how we built the culture in HCL. And I have a lot of ex-HCL people contributing. Maybe that'll be able to put it all together.
I'd love to collaborate with you. I'm writing a book as I reach out to you, and let's see how it goes. You already offered to help, so thank you for that. The structure is in place now. I'm calling it the Meta Entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share with you some details later what that means.
Sure.
So for our audience, every time, Arjun, I recommend a book. So instead of book, I am going to recommend a series, which is one of my favorite series. I don't know if you have watched it. It's on History Channel, and it's called The Man Who Built America. Have you ever heard about that?
No, but who is the person? Because I've done a little bit of reading on American history.
So its series is about Vanderbilt, JP Morgan Chase, a lot of them. And the reason I specifically picked that series is you have a lot of similarities with those entrepreneurs in that time. And what I feel personally is why I'm very excited and I am part of this American society today. America is the only country on planet, as far as I know, built by entrepreneurs. So we are going to thrive and we are going to come out of this COVID and we are going to make our world again better and greater. And we need more people like you.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but yes, America has been built by entrepreneurs. I completely agree. In fact, many years ago, I'd done a program at the Harvard Business School, and there we did the history of American business. And, starting from the railroad barons all the way up. And and why was the railroad?
Everyone, standard oil.
Why were the railroads built was because people wanted felt skins from this part of the world, California, to go out east where the market was. And they needed to transport stuff that they were getting from here. So yeah, it is. I think I'm not too worried about the world recovering from COVID. I don't think that is the problem. I think what people have to look at is what will be different, starting with healthcare, right? Earlier, 2% were telemedicine type consultations. People are now saying it'll be 20 to 25%. And those are the numbers that are being bandied around. It's also going to change transportation, hotels, restaurants, all high-touch industries, are going to have to reinvent themselves in some way. I don't have the answers, but people in those industries must be working very hard and thinking very hard about what and how. There are industries that have to upgrade themselves, that will continue to work, but be a little different. Healthcare is a good example. And there are industries that are going to grow, like IT services, AR, VR, a lot of things that were going slow earlier will suddenly find themselves getting a boost and growing much, much quicker. AI, for example, is going to get a big boost from this, AI, ML. So you're going to see a lot of things happening. And at the same time, technology doesn't stop. So you're going to see nanotechnology come in and start playing a role. You're seeing genetics become really important.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially we saw with mRNA now, what's happening? The virus, we are able to build a vaccine in less than a year. It's a game changer. It's phenomenal. Arjun, we are at the end of our show. And I can't thank you enough. It's such an amazing. I know 30 minutes is too little to have a conversation with you. You are wealth of the knowledge. For our audience, all I wanted to say is reach out to Arjun on LinkedIn. Phenomenal person. You should check him out. We are going to publish some of his article, and hopefully we will see his book soon, so we all can learn from that. Thank you very much, Arjun.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for listening.
I also want to thank our supporter, Radio Zindagi, NTTVC, and Droises. Once again, without them, I couldn't do this show. But most importantly, it's all of our audience. You are the reason we have this show. Please check the recordings on YouTube. Like the channel if you like the show. And please do send me your feedback and comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjeev.